So I suppose one of the things your book is trying to do is to repopulate the Georgian house. If we've become used to this idea of them as rather empty, austere, bare places. I was very struck by the fact that there would be spinsters in a little room here, or a sublet there, or servants sleeping here, there and everywhere. So it's a really sort of attempt to repopulate the house.
I think if you think about the interiors of Georgian townhouses, they'd be teeming, like a hive, really, or almost a rabbit warren. We have this idea that, we've got these pristine Georgian terraces and, with their immaculate exteriors, we have this idea of a kind of perfect Georgian uniformity. But inside, the majority of London houses were divided up into lodging rooms. On the ground floor, that would probably be the landlady and her family. The showier tenant had the first floor front room. Perhaps less well-off tenants would be towards the back and on the second floor, and the very, very poorest would be either in the basement or in the garret. Hacks traditionally starve in the garret, so the poet's always in the drafty garret. And then also all those individual rooms kind of tend to lock. Sometimes the landlady has a key, sometimes she doesn't have a key, but you'd be aware that there'd be, people tramping up and down those stairs all the time. You'd be hearing the din through the walls. It's not unknown for families to come to an arrangement with the house next door and knock a passageway through on the first floor. So it might look like you've got a kind of pristine terrace from the front, but inside you've got all sorts of odd connections.
And let me turn to wallpaper now, because I was fascinated by what you had to say about wallpaper and how you made the wallpaper speak, as it were, because there's so much is understood or implicit in the way people choose and buy wallpaper.
Yes, I think that it makes kind of political historians laugh that I've devoted so much attention to wallpaper, and clearly wallpaper is a superficial thing. It's all about surface. By the 19th century, if there's any reference to wallpapering in a novel, it's a sign that the person doing the wallpapering is a shallow, meretricious person who is only interested in veneer. But that's not the case for the 18th century. Wallpaper is associated with kind of wholesomeness, cleanliness, and it's a bargain. And that's one of the things which I think makes had made it so useful to me, really, in trying to get at what the more ordinary kind of middling consumers feel about decoration. So wallpaper is comparatively cheap. It is not a lifetime investment, so it means you can change it pretty regularly. It's very responsive to fashion. It's not unlike women in the 18th century who use accessories to transform a garment to keep up with fashion without having to spend a fortune. You can do just the same with wallpaper. But it was fascinating to me in all the letters that I read, thousands of them, to the London wallpaperer, Joseph Trollope and co. When people talk about wallpaper, even though you might think that this is a sort of mere superficial decoration, they're obsessed with the propriety, the decorum, and the morality of their choices. So it became clear to me that there's a whole kind of system about decoration which has been lost to us. So whenever they talk about, I want a paper that's neat and pretty in a trellis pattern, or neat and not too showy. So there's this very strong sense from middling consumers that your choices have to be appropriate to your status, appropriate to the room, appropriate to the position of your house. Is it in the country? So you've got a sense that underlying it was a whole system of understanding, which is as much about status as it is about fashion. One of the things that surprised me so much is the dominance of green. So green is obviously thoroughly inoffensive, and this was confirmed for me when I was reading Jane Austen's letters, and she was saying she'd been around an exhibition and she'd seen a painting at the Royal Academy which in her mind's eye was Jane Bennet, and she knew she was Jane Bennet because she was wearing green, and she assumed that green would be her favourite colour. And after all, Jane Bennet is one of literature's mildest heroines. So green is perfectly therapeutic. It's never the wrong choice.